Hello, my friends. Good morning. Good Monday morning to you, and welcome to another episode of PB Reads the Bible. And we are on episode 11. There we are, on our journey through the book of Judges. Sorry about that, a little bit of glare coming in, because although it's Monday morning for you, it's Sunday afternoon for me. I had forgot to mention the other day when we had our last session that I was going to have to do a video for today because I have a 9 o'clock meeting for the Board of Ordained Ministry. I can't be in two places at the same time, and even though they're both Zoom, I can't even do that. So I'm doing this as a pre-recording on Sunday afternoon for you. We're going to jump right into it because it only lets me record a 30-minute video to post. If I'm doing it live, it lets me keep going, but the service will only allow a 30-minute video. So where were we, right? We finished chapter 10 and we're about to start chapter 11. And the story sort of gets interrupted a little bit, it would seem, in order to introduce a new character. Wonderful little narrative ploy, narrative device taking place there, because it ended with the Ammonites preparing for war and the Israelites, saying, who's going to be the one to fight for us? Who's going to lead us? You would expect it to go right into that. Well, it does with a little bit of a segue, So let's read. Now Jephthah, the Gileadite, the son of a prostitute, was a mighty warrior. Gilead was the father of Jephthah. Gilead's wife also bore him sons. And when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah away, saying to him, you shall not inherit anything in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. Then Jephthah fled from his brothers, and they lived in the land of Tob. Outlaws collected around Jephthah and went raiding with him. Pause. So he's the illegitimate son of Gilead, we might say, and creates a whole, family discontent, dysfunction thing going on there. Notice what the son's complaint is. You're not going to inherit anything of our father's. So even their dislike of him is just the fact of, really comes down to money, to property. Get rid of him. He doesn't deserve a share. In other words, we don't want to share our shares. We would rather share his share amongst all of us, add it to all of our shares, that kind of thing. But notice also kind of the echoes to Abimelech, right? Abimelech, this one is the son of a prostitute. Abimelech was the son of a concubine. Not a whole lot of difference, really. Concubine was more welcomed, perhaps. But both had this, had the dysfunction and dislike of their brothers, we might say, although Abimelech's was almost the opposite, where it was he had the problem with them rather than the other way around. But they both congregated with riffraff, with ne'er-do-wells, so to speak, and they went raiding with him. After a time, the Ammonites made war against Israel. Okay, so we're back to the story. That was weird, right? And when the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said to Jephthah, come and be our commander so that we may fight with the Ammonites. But Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, are you not the very ones who rejected me and drove me out of my father's house? So why do you come to me now when you are in trouble? The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, nevertheless, we have now turned back to you so that you may go with us and fight with the Ammonites and become head over us, over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, if you bring me home again to fight with the Ammonites, and Yahweh gives them over to me, I will be your head. And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, Yahweh will be witness between us. We will surely do as you say. So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before Yahweh at Mizpah. Pause. I should have mentioned too, conversations and words spoken words are very important over these couple chapters. The stories with Jephthah, speech is important, and words, including when Jephthah can't keep his mouth shut, I would add, as would some other Bible scholars. Not other, just some Bible scholars, I should say. Otherwise, I'm considering myself a Bible scholar. Okay, so the idea of speech, of spoken word, is very important. We're going to see it happen a few different times, like 5 different times over a few chapters, and we have it here. We already had it once, the other day, with the conversation between Israel, between Gilead and God. Now, I want you don't have to do it right this minute. You can do it after we're done with the video. But compare the conversation between God and Gilead and Jephthah and Gilead. And I think you'll see they're almost mirror images. Although some of the words are different, the content is the same and the pattern is the same. Them seeking help, the reply of no, or kind of you brought it on yourself, kind of thing, and you turned your back on me. And well, yeah, okay, but we're going to turn around. We're coming back to you now. And then the agreement to do it. Okay. However, of course, God agreeing to deliver Gilead, God doesn't get anything out of it. There is no benefit to God to rescue, to provide for a deliverer for Gilead. But Jephthah is making sure that there's a benefit to him. Okay. So Jephthah is being set up as a very ambiguous character. I'm pretty sure anyway, that the author that was the author's intent, because there's also going to be some ambiguity perhaps in his language and a couple key points, at a key point at least. But he's being set up as we're not sure about his character. Because he was the son of a prostitute. He was with all these bad guys, but he's considered a mighty warrior, and they want him to lead them and be their head. So which kind of thing is he? Is he God's chosen deliverer for Israel? Is ultimately the question we're not quite sure yet. This is so interesting, the way the author has it set up. And Jephthah makes his first vow before God. His vow: if this happens, I vow before God, etc., etc. If God, what was it? Yeah, if Yahweh gives them over to me. So there's that vow in there. All right, continuing, verse 12. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said, okay, and again, we got more conversation, which is interesting because all the prior stories, right, as soon as the judge rises up, they go to war, and they really take it to the enemy and deliver Israel in that way. And Jephthah has been called a mighty warrior, so we expect that is what is going to happen as well. But it doesn't, at least not right away. We see something else in Jephthah's character. Again, more ambiguity. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said, what is there between you and me that you have come to me to fight against my land? The king of the Ammonites answered the messengers of Jephthah, because Israel, on coming from Egypt, took away my land from the Arnon to the Jabbok and to the Jordan. Now, therefore, restore it peaceably. Once again, Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said to him, thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. But when they came up from Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Reed Sea and came to Kadesh. Israel then sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, let us pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not listen. They also sent to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. So Israel remained at Kadesh. Then they journeyed through the wilderness, went around the land of Edom and the land of Moab, arrived on the east side of the land of Moab, and camped on the other side of the Arnon. They did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was the boundary of Moab. Israel then sent messengers to the king Sihon of the Amorites, king of Heshbon, and Israel said to him, "Let us pass through your land to our country." But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. So Sihon gathered all his people together and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. Then Yahweh, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they defeated them. So Israel occupied all the land of the Amorites who inhabited that country. They occupied all the territory of the Amorites, from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and from the wilderness to the Jordan. So now Yahweh, the God of Israel, has conquered the Amorites for the benefit of his people Israel. Do you intend to take their place? Should you not possess what your god Shemash gives you to possess? And should we not be the ones to possess everything that Yahweh, our God, has conquered for our benefit? Now, are you any better than King Balak, son of Zippor of Moab? Did he ever enter into conflict with Israel, or did he ever go to war with them? While Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and in Aroer and its villages, and in all the towns that are along the Arnon, 300 years. Why did you not recover them within that time? It is not I who have sinned against you, but you are the one who does me wrong by making war on me. Yet let Yahweh, who is judge, decide today for the Israelites or for the Ammonites. But the king of the Ammonites did not heed the message that Jephthah sent him. Pause. I know it was a long piece, right? Before my pause, but wanted to get the whole flow and we can sum everything up pretty quick. So we expected Jephthah, the mighty warrior, to go right to war. He doesn't. He tries a diplomatic tack. So we're seeing a different piece of his character. And again, we're confused. We're confused. How does this all fit together? And it would seem that he is a pretty good negotiator and a pretty good diplomat, trying to find a peaceable way. That's what it seems. That's what it's setting it up here, right? He first sends messengers. What's your problem? What's your problem? Why are you coming at me? Why are you coming at me? Find out what it is. What is it that you want? What is it that you want? Why are you trying? Why are you interested in attacking me? He gets the answer, you stole my land. And Jephthah then recounts the story as told in Numbers, about this whole thing is related there. And he's reiterating, he's iterating the same thing. He's coming back with the whole story right out of the book of Numbers of how this took place, and Sihon coming, attacking them when he shouldn't have. Now, what's interesting is, and either the author made a mistake or the author did it intentionally. When he gets kind of to the end of that, and he says, you're gonna, Yahweh gave us this land because of what that king did. Are you gonna try to take the place of the people of Israel that God gave this land to? Maybe you should just be satisfied with the land that your God Shemash has given to you. Okay, two things. One, this is that idea that a God has certain territories, certain land boundaries, which we do find that from time to time in the Old Testament, that various lands have been. There's even a passage, God divided up the land according to the gods, so to speak, and set boundaries. So you have your God, and your God gives you your land, and that should be good enough. However, okay, that's one thing. However, this is the number two. Chemosh wasn't the god of the Ammonites. The Ammonites, their chief god was Molech, and one other name can't remember. But Shamash was actually the god of the Moabites, which is interesting that the author makes this mistake, but maybe not. Maybe Jephthah, maybe the author believed that that name was good enough for like kind of like sum up all of the false gods, or it was an intentional reference to a practice by a Moabite king, and I don't remember where the story is in the Old Testament, in trying to stop the battle and the destruction that Israel was causing, when he offered his son as a sacrifice to Shamash, and the battle ended. He was able to save his people because he sacrificed his child. So maybe that's the author's point. We don't know. It's unusual and it's ambiguous. I love that word lately. Okay, so we're not 100% sure what's going on, but he's telling them, just be happy with the land your God gave you. Thinking, okay, maybe that's not enough. He then even comes up with another argument to support his side, to support what he's saying. It's been over 300 years since we stole your land. How come you didn't do anything until now? Ooh. Ooh. So he's got several arguments. He's got strong arguments, a strong position against the king, the Ammonite king, but nothing seems to be working, and he won't listen. He won't listen. Then the Spirit of Yahweh came upon Jephthah. Ooh, okay, good. Pause. We think, okay, great. The Spirit of Yahweh. So Jephthah is the chosen one, God's chosen deliverer for the people of Israel, or at least for the people of Gilead. At least for the people of Gilead, because we're going to talk about that too. But we remember that the couple different times when the Spirit of the Lord comes, it can be positive or it can have negative consequences depending on the person. Remember when Othniel received it, it gave him great power and all that kind of stuff. When Gideon received the Spirit of the Lord, he was still very timid and afraid. It didn't give him the strength he needed, and he still needed to test God. And then God, of course, sent an evil spirit to cause distrust and trouble between Abimelech and the people of Shechem. So what's going to happen with this Spirit of the Lord that comes to Jephthah? And he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, so only two of the places. He passed on to Mitzpah of Gilead, and from Mitzpah of Gilead, he passed on to the Ammonites. Pause. So he was only able to gather an army. That's what it means when he says he passed through there, that he was collecting people, trying to collect people to come fight with him. But we see, as again, part of that downward spiral of Israel, not all the tribes of Israel are coming to the defense. And so he's only able to get from Gilead and Manasseh, from these two clans, rather than from everybody, in order to fight the Ammonites. And Jephthah, but we think, battle time, not quite. And Jephthah made a vow to Yahweh and said, if you will give the Ammonites into my hand, then whoever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return victorious from the Ammonites, shall be Yahweh's, to be offered up by me as a burnt offering. Pause. Why? Several problems with this. And if you're reading the NIV, it says, whatever comes out of the door of my house. In the NRSV translates it as whoever. The word can be either. So we kind of have to think what makes more sense. Well, an animal, especially a worthy sacrifice animal, probably wouldn't be coming out from a house. But he gets carried away. He can't keep his mouth shut, and he makes this vow to God, which is a problem in itself. It's okay to make a vow to God, but never a vow like this. I mean, that's problematic, making a vow about killing someone. That's wrong. But it's also problematic because of what Jephthah has just done. He set this whole thing up with his legal arguments, his negotiations were set up as a legal argument because it ends, let Yahweh be our judge today. So he has set up as a legal dispute where God is going to be the judge, and it's going to be decided and acted out through a battle. But Deuteronomy, I think it's Deuteronomy, very, very key passage in scripture and in Jewish law. You cannot bribe or make pledges or vows to a judge to try to persuade them in your way. And that's exactly what he's doing. So that's a problematic vow right off the bat, regardless of whether or not it's a whoever or whatever. It's the idea of making this vow to God, trying to persuade God when you set it up as a court case. Okay. So Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and Yahweh gave them into his hand. He inflicted a massive defeat on them from Aroer to the neighborhood of Minnith, 20 towns, and as far as Abal Karamim. So the Ammonites were subdued before the people of Israel. Pause. So battle has taken place. Based on prior stories, that should be it. The next lines we should read was, and so there was peace in the land, and Jephthah served as judge for 40 years, right? That should be the next lines. Then Jephthah, what happened to the peace for 40 years? Then Jephthah came to his home at Mitzpah, and there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and with dancing. That was a common way for women to celebrate the returning victors from battle. She was his only child. He had no son or daughter except her. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low. You have become the cause of great trouble for me. For I have opened my mouth to Yahweh, and I cannot take back my vow." Pause. Notice his choice of words. He's blaming his daughter. It seems he can't accept the blame himself. He says, "You have brought me very low. You have become the cause of great trouble to me." As an afterthought, he says, "Because I have opened up my mouth to the Lord." But he's blaming her for the vow that he took. She said to him, "My father, if you have opened your mouth to Yahweh, do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth. Now that Yahweh has given you vengeance against your enemies, the Ammonites." And she said to her father, "Let this thing be done for me. Grant me 2 months, so that I may go and wander on the mountains and bewail my virginity, my companions and I." "Go," he said, and sent her away for 2 months. So she departed, she and her companions, and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. At the end of 2 months, she returned to her father, who did with her according to the vow he had made. She had never slept with a man, so there arose an Israelite custom that for 4 days every year, the daughters of Israel would go out to lament the daughter of Jephthah, the Gileadite. End of chapter 11. Wow. So, Jephthah, in that middle part of today's passage, his whole negotiation with the Ammonites shows him to be a fairly good negotiator. Why didn't he try to negotiate with God regarding his vow? Because God never asked him to make the vow. And God does not like children being killed. Never did. That's something that Shemash and Moloch do, but not Yahweh God. So why didn't he try to negotiate? Now there are different arguments about this story, different theories. The oldest theory among Jews and Christians is that Jephthah did kill his daughter and burn her as a sacrifice, because that's what his vow said. There are other theories, not exact, I wouldn't say, well, more recent compared to those, but not like new, not recent, still hundreds and hundreds of years old, that he didn't, because it doesn't say he killed her. It just says that he did according to the vow he had made. But in the vow, it says he was going to devote her to the Lord. And then it follows that up by saying, as a burnt offering. So there are some that say he just devoted her to the Lord, and that she remained a virgin for the rest of her life. And so they bewailed her virginity. I don't see that. The scripture itself says, the story says, part of his vow was that she was going to be offered as a burnt offering. And it says he did exactly what he said. Everything according to the vow he had made. That would include the burnt offering part. And it does say they lament the daughter of Jephthah. But of course, you know what he did? She was his only daughter. So he didn't have any sons. So there was no way for him to continue his name through his son. Theoretically, the only way he could have continued his name and gained life beyond this life, that was the big thing, was through grandchildren, through grandsons. Not as efficient or efficacious as through a child, but he still had that possibility if certain things took place. Anyway, my friends, that's it for today. We will be back at this tomorrow, my 2 days from now, on Tuesday morning. Pray that this has been beneficial to you, that God has spoken to you in some way. As you go about your days, keep those eyes and ears, physical and spiritual, open to what God is doing in your life and in the lives of those around you. When you see it, when you hear it, say, "Thank you, God," and then tell somebody. Until we meet again, be blessed, my friends. Be blessed. Bye.